The dawn crept over the battlements like a shy child peeking into a room full of secrets. Jasper, once merely the kingdom's jester, now found himself standing before an army as improbable as a sober drunkard. The motley crew of misfits, fools, and oddly talented oddballs gathered in the dewy morning, their faces a mixture of hope, skepticism, and the faint scent of stale ale. Jasper adjusted his cap, the jingling bells ringing softly a tune of impending change. "Good morrow, brave idiots," he called out, voice ringing with a confidence he was still learning to own. "Today, we abandon the drab drumbeats of war and march to the cadence of laughter and truth." The soldiers blinked, some exchanged wary glances, but the gleam in Jasper's eyes was infectious. He unfolded his plan, a tapestry woven not from swords and shields, but from the cunning art of unmasking illusions with wit and candor. Mistress Snark, ever the skeptic, arched an eyebrow. "You propose to defeat sorcery with jokes and honesty?" she questioned, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Indeed," Jasper replied with a grin. "For what is an illusion but a lie dressed in finery? And who better to unmask lies than a fool who tells the truth?" Captain Blunderbuss scoffed, thumping his chest. "Bah, I've seen more effective tactics in a drunken brawl at the tavern." Yet even he couldn't suppress a chuckle when Grumple, the army's slowest recruit, attempted a simple marching drill only to trip spectacularly over his own foot, landing with a graceless flop that sent nearby soldiers into peals of laughter. This spontaneous comedy thawed the icy doubts that had clung to the camp like morning mist. As the day wore on, Jasper organized training unlike any the kingdom had seen. Instead of rigid drills, he encouraged storytelling, riddles, and mock battles where the weapons were words and the shields were honesty. The soldiers learned to spot the subtle cracks in their foes' magical facades, to challenge illusions not with brute force, but with the unexpected weapon of truth. One moonlit night, Jasper took a small group to test his strategy. They approached an enemy outpost surrounded by shimmering illusions walls that shifted like mirages, enemies that flickered and doubled. Jasper stepped forward, voice loud and clear, and told a story so absurdly truthful about the enemy commander's obsession with collecting enchanted spoons that the illusions wavered, then collapsed like mist under the morning sun. The soldiers stared in disbelief, then erupted into cheers. "It works," Jasper whispered, the weight of the crown feeling just a bit lighter. Yet, not all was smooth. Mistress Snark warned that relying on humor and honesty was a gamble against foes who thrived on deception. "If we falter," she said, "our laughter will ring hollow, and the truth may cut us deeper than any blade." But Jasper was undeterred. He believed that in a world twisted by lies and illusions, only a fool armed with unvarnished truth could turn the tide. As the chapter closed, the Jester's army, once a motley band of misfits, began to see themselves as something more force that could defy magic with the sheer power of wit and candor. And so, the war of illusions was met not with swords alone, but with laughter that echoed through the enchanted forests and truth that burned brighter than the fiercest spell. It began, as most things did in this topsy-turvy kingdom, with a reflection or, rather, 1,000 reflections. Standing at the edge of what should have been a straightforward battleground, I found myself staring into an endless hall of mirrors. The enemy had outdone themselves. Walls of glistening glass rose from the earth, each pane shimmering with enchantments that distorted, duplicated, and multiplied every image. Our army, my army, was caught in a funhouse of magical trickery. The only problem was, this wasn't a carnival ride. It was a war zone. I adjusted my fool's cap, the bells jingling nervously as I took a deep breath. The court might have enjoyed my honesty, but honesty on a battlefield was a different matter entirely. Well, I muttered to myself, if everyone else is lying, at least I have the truth on my side. Though judging by these mirrors, the truth might be playing hide and seek. Sir Bumblebottom, our esteemed captain of the idiots, stumbled beside me, his oversized helmet wobbling perilously. "Your Majesty," he said, squinting at the kaleidoscope of reflections, "which one is the enemy? All I see are hundreds of me, and none of them look particularly threatening." "That's the point," I replied, trying to keep the dry humor from spilling into panic. "They want us to waste time chasing shadows and reflections. But shadows can't bite, and reflections don't bleed." Bumblebottom attempted a brave nod, only to trip on his own feet moments later, sending a clatter of armor plates jingling like a maraca. The troops around us suppressed chuckles, the tension momentarily broken by the captain's pratfall. Even amid the chaos, camaraderie found a foothold. Our scout, Flick, darted forward, his small frame weaving between the mirrored walls with the grace of a squirrel and the eyes of a hawk. "Your Majesty," he called, voice sharp and eager. "I think I've found a way through. The reflections don't cover every inch. There are cracks and spaces where the magic falters." I raised an eyebrow. "Lead the way then, but stay sharp. This is no ordinary maze. It's an illusionist's playground, and our foe is a master of deceit." As we followed Flick's lead, the mirrors began to twist and ripple, the surface shimmering like liquid mercury. From atop a raised pedestal of gleaming glass, Mira, the enchantress, materialized. Her robes flowed with iridescent hues, and her eyes, reflecting countless images, bore into me with a mixture of amusement and menace. "Ah, the fool who speaks truth," she purred, voice echoing eerily through the mirrored hall. "Did you think you could outwit illusions with mere honesty? How quaint," I grinned, the bell on my cap jingling in defiance. "Dear Mira, sometimes the simplest truth is the sharpest blade. You spin your webs of glittering lies, but even a fool can see through the shimmer." With a flick of her wrist, the mirrors pulsed, and the reflections exploded into a dazzling array of illusions, phantoms of soldiers, shifting landscapes, and haunting laughter. The battlefield twisted into a surreal dance of light and shadow. Sir Bumblebottom charged, rallying the troops with a booming, if somewhat off-key, battle cry. But every step he took, another Bumblebottom appeared, stumbling in perfect slapstick synchronization, turning the charge into a chaotic ballet of confusion. Our soldiers found themselves laughing and tripping, their focus fractured by the absurdity. I called out, "Remember, comrades, the real enemy doesn't stumble. Follow the truths you know, not the lies you see." Slowly, the tide began to turn. Using humor as a shield, I pointed out the inconsistencies in the illusions, the way a reflection's shadow didn't match its source. The sound of footsteps echoed too late, the way the air felt cooler near the real path. Flick led us through the gaps in the glass maze, his keen eyes guiding our steps. Each breakthrough was met with renewed hope, the laughter of confusion turning into cheers of cautious triumph. Mira's smile faltered, her illusions flickering like a candle in a draught. "You may see through my tricks, fool," she hissed, "but the game is far from over." "Oh, I do love a good game," I replied, bowing mockingly, "especially when the rules are made up and the points don't matter." As the army rallied behind me, we emerged from the labyrinth of mirrors more united and determined. The battlefield, once a maze of deception, had become a stage for our own brand of truth and folly. But as we prepared for the next act, I couldn't help but wonder how many more illusions awaited us, and would our laughter be enough to shatter them all? The jingle of my cap was louder now, a clarion call to the absurdity and courage that defined us. And in this enchanted kingdom where lies were currency, perhaps the greatest weapon was a fool who refused to lie. With a final glance at the shimmering battlefield behind us, I muttered, "Onward, my army of idiots. Let's show them how truth dances with folly." And so, the dance continued, mirrors, reflecting not just illusions, but the indomitable spirit of a fool turned king. The court of confusion, the throne room, usually a place of pomp and predictability, had become a theater of whispered plots and barely concealed panic. The absence of the jester turned king was more than just a gap on the throne. It was a chasm into which every rumor, every petty ambition poured unchecked. Courtiers shuffled about in their finery, faces painted with smiles that never quite reached their eyes, voices hushed but sharp as daggers. Lady Marigold, ever the picture of serene competence, moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through fog. Her emerald robes swished softly, a stark contrast to the murmur of scheming that filled the marble hall. She had always been a loyalist, her devotion to the kingdom unwavering, even when the old king had been more interested in his wine than his subjects. Now, with the jester gone from sight, she found herself a reluctant anchor among the swirling currents of uncertainty. "Have you heard?" whispered Mistress Wren, sidling up to Marigold with a glint in her eye. The court gossip was a diminutive whirlwind of energy, eyes darting like a bird's as she delivered her latest tidbit. "They say Lord Fumbleton is gathering allies for some grand scheme. A coup, perhaps." Marigold's gaze flicked toward the rotund figure of Lord Fumbleton, who was currently engaged in a lively conversation with a group of equally suspicious-looking nobles. His overly bright clothes and greasy moustache gave him the appearance of a man trying too hard to stand out an impression that suited his ambitions perfectly. "Fumbleton has always fancied himself a kingmaker," Marigold murmured, "but without the jester here, the court is a nest of vipers." Meanwhile, Sir Reginald paced near the main entrance, his polished armor reflecting the flickering torchlight. His expression was as stern as the steel he bore, every furrow in his brow a testament to his concern for the kingdom's stability. The guardsmen under his command were restless, their loyalty as uncertain as the day was long. "The palace holds more secrets than the deepest dungeons," Sir Reginald confided to Marigold during a brief moment of privacy, "and in the jester's absence, those secrets are taking on a life of their own." The irony was not lost on her. The man who had once been the kingdom's fool, the sole bearer of truth, was now a ghost within his own quarter, truth-teller absent in the very place that needed him most. As the day wore on, Jasper, disguised in the motley of his former professions, slipped quietly into the palace corridors. His sharp eyes caught every glance, every whispered word, every furtive gesture. He was both observer and participant in this grand game of deception and ambition. In the dim light of a narrow hallway, Lady Marigold confronted Lord Fumbleton. Their voices were low, but charged with veiled menace. "You play a dangerous game, Lord Fumbleton," she said, her tones silk wrapped around steel. "The kingdom needs stability, not your self-serving chaos." Fumbleton chuckled, a sound like a frog clearing its throat. "And what would you have me do, dear lady? Bow to a jester's whim? The throne without a king is a prize worth seizing." Their exchange was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Mistress Wren, who brandished a folded note like a weapon. "This just arrived," she announced, eyes gleaming. "An invitation to an exclusive gathering where the fate of the kingdom will be decided." Marigold unfolded the note, her expression darkening. "The court is unraveling," she whispered. Jasper stepped forward, revealing himself with a flourish that drew startled gasps. "Or perhaps," he said, with a crooked smile, "it is simply untangling the lies that have bound it." The courtiers turned, some aghast, others intrigued. The jester's presence was a bomb and a challenge, his honesty cutting through the fog of deceit like a blade. "We are at a crossroads," Jasper declared, his voice ringing with unexpected authority. "Choose loyalty to the kingdom, or be swept away by the tides of your own making." The room fell into a charged silence, broken only by the distant clang of armor and the rustling of silk. In that moment, the court of confusion held its breath, teetering on the edge of chaos and order. As the evening shadows lengthened, Jasper realized that leadership was less about commands and more about the fragile trust he could inspire. In a kingdom built on lies, truth was not just a weapon, it was a lifeline. And he, the fool who told the truth, would be the one to throw it. But the question lingered, as persistent as the flickering torchlight: could trust survive in a court built on deception and self-interest? Only time and the next foolish step would tell. It was a truth universally acknowledged in the magical kingdom that everyone lied except the jester. This, of course, was a truth wrapped in a lie, but that was the kingdom's usual brand of logic practicality, draped in absurdity. On this particular day, I found myself standing in the royal archives, a dim cavern of dusty scrolls and ancient tomes that smelled faintly of aged cheese and forgotten secrets. The flickering candlelight danced across parchments that shimmered with faint enchantments, as if the very words were alive, whispering in a language only the truly foolish could understand. Master Thatch, the court magician, with his wild white hair and spectacles magnifying eyes that had seen far too much, leaned over a particularly ancient scroll. "These," he said, in a voice that sounded like dry leaves rustling in a forgotten forest, "are the binding lies." "Binding lies," I echoed, cocking my head so that a bell jingled on my cap. "Sounds like a government program." He chuckled, a sound like a creaky door opening. "Not quite. These are enchanted lies, spells cast long ago that hold the fabric of the kingdom together. Without them, chaos would reign, illusions would shatter, and the very ground beneath our feet might crumble." I blinked, the absurdity of it all swirling in my mind like a drunk bard's tune. "So you're telling me the kingdom is held together by lies?" "Yes," he said simply, "but lies that protect, lies that heal, lies that bind." The room felt colder suddenly, the shadows stretching like fingers across the floor. I shuffled back, my motley feeling heavier than ever. Later, in the council chamber, Lady Verity sat across from me, her deep blue robes a stark contrast to my garish attire. Her silver-threaded gaze was sharp and unwavering. "Your Highness," she began, her voice steady, "honesty has served us well, but not all truths are beneficial. Some lies maintain the peace and morale of the people. To unravel them recklessly could bring ruin." I tapped my fingers on the wooden table, my mind a jigsaw puzzle missing its final piece. "But am I not the jester, the one who must tell the truth?" She smiled, a sad smile, "and sometimes the greatest truth is knowing when not to speak it." The council listened in silence, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows that danced mockingly on the walls. The paradox of truth and lies hung heavy in the air, a riddle with no easy answer. That evening, I escaped to the castle gardens at twilight. The scent of night flowers was intoxicating, their heavy perfume wrapping around me like a velvet cloak. The distant laughter of the court echoed faintly, playful and cruel all at once. I wandered along the cobblestone paths, the cool air whispering secrets only the fool could hear. How had I become so entangled in these webs of deceit, Was my honesty a beacon or a blunder? Was I the fool or the king? Captain Bumble's voice jolted me from my reverie the next day. In the war room, amidst maps and miniature soldiers, his latest blunderer, disastrously misplaced supply wagon, had the room erupting in laughter. His nervous grin and clumsy apologies reminded me that even amidst chaos, there was strength in camaraderie and shared folly. Perhaps, I thought, the kingdom was not just held together by lies or truths, but by the laughter and resilience that lived between them. As the candle burned low that night, I sat alone, the weight of leadership pressing upon me. The enchanted lies that bound our realm were not mere falsehoods, but a complex tapestry woven with care and necessity. To lead was to navigate this delicate balance, to know when to speak and when to smile in silence. And so, with a fool's heart and a king's burden, I resolved to embrace the paradox, to wield truth and lie alike as tools in the grand performance of governance. But just as I thought I understood the script, a new whisper stirred the prophecy, ever so unlucky, hinting that the greatest illusion was yet to come. And with it, the question, was I fool or king, or merely a player in a far grander jest? The game was far from over, and the punchline, I suspected, was yet to be delivered. The grand hall of the Illuminary Palace was no longer a place anyone could recognize with certainty. What once had been solid stone walls and polished marble floors now rippled like liquid glass, as if the very fabric of reality was being kneaded by unseen hands. Chandeliers hung upside down from the ceiling, their candles flickering wildly yet casting shadows that danced with a life of their own, independent of their flickering flames. The air smelled faintly of burnt sugar and ozone, a scent that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I stood at the center of this surreal stage, my fool's cap jingling softly with each nervous twitch of a head or shrug of a shoulder. Facing me was Mordrith the illusionist, the enemy's enigmatic leader whose reputation for weaving nightmares and fantasies alike was as legendary as his disdain for honesty. He was draped in robes that shimmered and shifted like smoke caught in a breeze, his face obscured by a mask that flickered one moment beautiful, the next terrifying. His eyes gleamed with a cunning that could have frozen a lesser man in place. "Ah, your Majesty," Mordrith purred, his voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "I trust you're ready to dance with shadows, to play with mirrors and smoke." I adjusted the motley around my shoulders and grinned, the bells on my cap chiming. "More ready than you think, Mordrith. After all, a fool's greatest weapon is the truth, something your illusions can never wear like a cloak." Sergeant Bumble shuffled beside me, his armor clinking awkwardly. He gave a nervous glance at the swirling room. "Do you think this is safe, sire?" "Safe?" I chuckled. "When have I ever been safe?" Mordrith waved a slender hand, and the walls around us began to warp further, twisting into impossible angles and shapes. The floor beneath my feet shifted like a kaleidoscope, colors bleeding into one another and forming dizzying patterns. From the edges of the room, phantasmal figures emerged, ghostly dancers, snarling beasts, and whispering faces that dissolved before you could focus on them. "Behold," Mordrith declared, "the power of illusion. What you see is not what is, and what is will never be trusted." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every aerial and spectral on me. "Then let us see if your illusions can withstand a fool's honesty." With that, I began, not with magic, for I had little of that sort, but with words, the sharpest tool in my arsenal. I pointed at the nearest phantom, a snarling wolf made of smoke and shadow, and said, "You're not a wolf, but a trick of light and fear. And like all tricks, you're empty underneath." The wolf flickered, its snarls turning to confused whimpers before it dissipated into a wisp of smoke. Encouraged, I moved on, calling out the lies behind each illusion. This chandelier doesn't hang upside down. It's your mind playing a cruel joke. That echoing laughter, just the wind trapped in your ears. Each truth I spoke cracked the illusions like fragile glass, causing the room to shudder and ripple as if it too was startled. Mordred's eyes narrowed, and he conjured a swirling vortex of colors and shapes, more dazzling and confounding than anything I had yet seen. The vortex twisted around us, pulling at the edges of reality, threatening to swallow us whole. "You cannot defeat what you cannot hold," he hissed. "Illusions are stronger than truths, for they are what people want to believe." But I smiled, the bells on my cap jingling as I stepped closer. But illusions crumble when faced with laughter and light. I launched into a barrage of biting truths wrapped in humor, mocking the grandiosity of the illusions and the absurdity of their creator. "Is that your best? A swirling mess of colors and mirrors. I've seen better magic tricks at a tavern's birthday party." The vortex faltered, colors spilling haphazardly like spilled paint. Mordred's mask flickered, revealing a flicker of doubt in his gleaming eyes. Our gazes locked a moment of silence thick with tension. For the first time, I saw behind the mask not a master of deception, but a man fighting to hold on to his illusions. You see through me," he whispered, voice cracking. "Indeed," I replied softly, "because I have no illusions to hide behind." In that suspended moment, the hall seemed to hold its breath. Then I did the unthinkable. I laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed through the hall and shattered the tension like glass. The illusions wavered, flickering and dissolving into nothingness. The walls solidified, the chandeliers righted themselves, and the warm, natural light of the sun spilled through the stained glass windows. Mordred staggered back, his mask finally falling away to reveal a face both weary and begrudgingly respectful. "You are a fool, indeed. But perhaps the greatest of all." I bowed with a flourish, bells jingling merrily. "A fool who tells the truth is the most dangerous player in any game." Sergeant Bumble clapped me on the back, nearly knocking me over. "Well done, sire. That was, well, extraordinary." "Extraordinary, yes," I replied, eyes still on Mordred. "But this is only the beginning. The war of illusions still brews, and now they know our greatest weapon, a fool who never lies." As we left the Illuminary Palace behind, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose. The battlefield ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, hope flickered in the hearts of the army of idiots I led. For if even the greatest illusionist could be undone by truth and laughter, then perhaps there was a chance we could win this absurd war after all. And if not, well, at least it would be one hell of a story to tell.